Hey, you. Yes, you. Do your children have too much free time on their hands? Are you looking for a way to get them out of the house? Well, you should consider signing them up for Podracing. This exciting, character-building sport is an excellent outdoor activity for all your children to enjoy. It'll improve your children's reflexes, their fine motor skills, and in all likelihood, it will keep them out of your hair for the whole school year, and possibly even forever. Podracing is fast, fun, and above all, it's child-friendly. If 9-year-old Anakin Skywalker could do it, after all, your kid can too. But if you're still not convinced, in this video, we'll be providing a full rundown of the sport and its history.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Podracers evolved from simple animal-drawn carts that were once used for racing all over the galaxy on less advanced worlds. Those sorts of races were an especially prominent tradition in the ancient Hutt Empire, where they were held in honor of major conquests. Bunta the Hutt, for example, had races held in his honor after his armies devastated the rebellious Hutt vassal planet Moralan. As technology advanced, the time of the animal-drawn chariot came to an end, but whenever new vehicles came out, people figured out ways to race them. All over the galaxy, people raced Hano speeders, land speeders, and speeder bikes. Swoop bikes specifically designed for racing were a galaxy-wide favorite for thousands of years, but pod races were a return to tradition, adapting modern technology to the style of the old kart races of the Hutts. Modern pod racing came about in 100 BBY, the brainchild of Malastare native Gustav Wenbus. Wenbus won several conventional races on Malastare using an experimental pod racer designed for him by the mechanic Phobos, which was unreasonably fast and thus easily beat out all the competition. The concept of design was simple if insane. Wenbus rode in a small pod not unlike the animal-drawn carts of old, but instead of animals, his pod was driven by a pair of high-powered engines. The engines were linked only by a set of energy binders, and they were connected to the pod only by a pair of cables. The design abandoned all pretense of safety in favor of raw speed, and it was so fast that pod racing ended up becoming a league of its own. Wenbus was instrumental in setting up the original pod racing circuits and standardizing its rules. These rules were quite simple. Racers were to build a pod, make it fast, and then race, nothing more. The nature of pod racing made the sport somewhat exclusionary. You needed fast reflexes to participate, beyond what the average human was capable of. Pod racers also tended to be from smaller species, as larger beings tended to be heavier and thus slowed their pods down. Most human adults couldn't even fit in a standard pod, but human children could, as shown by Anakin Skywalker. See, we told you, the sport was practically designed with children in mind. Even if your kids aren't force sensitive, the sport is simple enough that they'll easily get the hang of it. Pod racing wasn't all about the racing. An essential part of the sport was building your own pod. Every pod racer was as unique as its owner, and a testament to their ingenuity, often built from scrap and spare parts. As the sport became more popular, some parts were standardized. Many manufacturers made pod racer engines, which are used as a base by racers. But these stock products were always heavily modified, often to the point of being unrecognizable when compared to the original. Some companies did sell prefabricated pod racers that they marketed as factory customs, which were usually made from spare parts but on dedicated production lines. Many racers derided use of these pod racers as cheating, however, even if they were modified by those who purchased them. That's good news for you if you're not looking to buy a pod racer for your kid. Having them build their own pod racers from scratch is part of the spirit of the sport. The most important component of any pod racer was its engines. As with all things pod racing, the composition of pod racer engines varied dramatically. Most pods only had 2, but some had as many as 6. Generally, these engines came in 2 varieties: combustion-powered engines, which featured prominent turbines and many moving mechanical parts, and either rocket or ion engines, which lacked moving mechanical parts. Examples of the former included the Radon Ulza 620C engines used by Anakin Skywalker for his pod racer. Examples of the latter included the iconic Plug F Mammoth engines used by Sebulba. Both varieties featured powerful repulsor lifts to keep the craft aloft, Podracer engines could also be equipped with a number of performance-enhancing features, such as oversized intakes, air scoops, and afterburners. Many Podracers also featured illegal modifications and weapons, typically well hidden, such as buzzsaws and makeshift flamethrowers. A Podracer's engines were held together by arcs of pinkish plasma energy generated by a pair of blinder plates. A pair of heavy-duty control cables linked a Podracer's engines to its control pod. These pods, much like their engines, varied wildly in design, but they shared a few commonalities. To start, they were usually designed to be as lightweight as possible, consisting of little more than a pilot's seat, a set of controls, maybe a windshield, and attachment points for the control cables. Podracer control schemes tended to vary. Usually the pod was driven via a pair of throttle levers, but most pods also featured onboard sensors and computers that allowed their pilots to see craft coming up behind them and micromanage how their engines were functioning. Podracers flown by non-humans with unique anatomy were typically designed to take advantage of their pilot's physiology. Sebulba's Podracer, for example, was designed so that he could fly it with his feet, while Gazgano's Podracer featured multiple sets of control yokes to take advantage of his 4 arms. Safety features which added unnecessary weight and expense were rarely included in Podracers. The original Podracers were made from scrap and old military surplus. They were very dangerous, unbearably loud, and spewed all manner of carcinogens into the atmosphere. Naturally, they quickly became popular with racing fans. In the years after the sport first took off, Podracer design was refined and standardized somewhat, and the sport spread far and wide across the outer rim. Podracers could typically easily break 800 kilometers per hour, making podracers extremely fast-paced and exciting. Podracing was the ultimate challenge, the ultimate test of speed and reflexes, and it often played out on courses that made the sport even more dangerous. The Galactic Republic, which was far too wimpy to be able to handle such an awesome sport, formally outlawed podracing, but the sport continued anyway, both within and beyond the borders of the Republic space. This was largely because the Hutts were major supporters of podracing, not because they enjoyed its mind, but because they could make a killing by sponsoring it and controlling the high-stakes betting that surrounded it. Thus, podracing was common in Hutt space, its peripheral territories, and the Republic sectors that the Hutts dominated. Pod races were often held on Hutt worlds for holidays like Bunta Eve, which continued the tradition of races in honor of Hutt conquerors. The Bunta Eve Classic, the largest, most famous, and most dangerous pod race, was held annually on Tatooine. There were hotspots of the sport apart from Tatooine and Hutt space, however. Malastare, where the sport originated, was far from Hutt territory. Indeed, it was located within the borders of the Republic. Nonetheless, Malastare's Winter Harvest Classic was second only to the Bunta Eve races. Other popular races included the Ando Overland on Ando Prime, the Aline Classic on Alina, the Zugga Challenge on Mongaza, and the Fire Mountain Rally on Barunda. Not even the core worlds were completely free of pod racing. Many fans of the sport watched live feeds of it from the core. The sport peaked in popularity after 32 BBY, when the human child Anakin Skywalker won the Bunta Eve Classic. In the years that followed, however, the sport began to suffer a decline. There were crackdowns on a lot of popular cheating techniques that some pod racers relied on, and many of the most famous racers were imprisoned for criminal activities. The core worlds passed stronger bans on the sport and began active crackdowns, and as the Separatist crisis ripped the galaxy in two, interest in the sport declined. Shortly before the outbreak of the Clone Wars, a report in the HoloNet News indicated that pod race attendance had been cut in half since the Battle of Naboo, though betting remained at an all-time high. Things got even worse for pod racing once the Empire took power. The Republic was whiny enough about how unsafe the sport was, but the Empire was even worse. Of course, the Empire was less concerned with the safety of pod racing and more the fact that it primarily appealed to non-humans. The popularity of a sport in which humans were generally unable to compete due to inferior reaction times and physical attributes didn't jibe well with the Empire's notions of human superiority. So the Empire did its very best to crush the sport. Imperial law enforcement seized pod races, shut down race courses, and arrested racers, all but eliminating the sport. But pod racing survived the Empire. Illegal circuits popped up here and there, avoiding imperial scrutiny wherever possible, and after the Empire fell, the sport saw somewhat of a resurgence, though it never returned to its former glory. But you and your children can help change that. Stick it to the Empire and sign your kids up for pod racing today. But what do you think? Have you already shipped your children off to Tatooine for the Bunta Eve Classic? Let us know how they fare in the comment section below, and to all you pod racers out there, break a leg.